Welcome back to part 6 of this OC story time where you guys have been voting and I have been creating an improvised story based on what you guys want and, well, a little bit of flair of my own. So we start part 6 where we left off in part 5 with our two characters, the assassin Darrow and the prince Erasmus, opposite each other on a bed. Erasmus has just had his hair dyed black so he can avoid detection from his wanted posters, as he is now a wanted criminal for apparently murdering his father, the king. And Darrow the assassin, who helped him dye his hair, is now sitting opposite this prince, and they've had a really deep, dark conversation about how the prince was not afraid that an assassin came into his carriage because he was already planning to end his own life. He talks about how he was going to do this when him and Darrow opened up in the tavern, and then Darrow offered him the vial that he had been given all those years ago when he failed something. Darrow explained that he is supposed to be dead himself. He was supposed to drink that poison that was in the vial, and he is long since supposed to have been dead. But he was too afraid to do it, so he kept the vial on his person at all times, a reminder of when he completely fucked up, and he ran. And this is the vial that he offered to Prince Erasmus at the very end of the last episode. I then left it up to you guys in the comments section and over on Instagram and TikTok. I asked you what you guys wanted to see, and very crucially and importantly, I gave you 3 options of what could happen next. Option number 1 was that somehow the vial was a trick. It was not poison at all. Either the poison had never been poison at all, and Darrow himself would have been fine if he'd drunk it all those years ago, or Darrow had pulled a switcheroo on the prince and was tricking him with a non-lethal vial. Option number 2 is that the prince would go to drink it, and Darrow would stop him. Option number 3 was that the prince would not accept the vial. And now, let's see what the result of you guys voting was. Well, as ever, my wonderful jelly spoons, you never want just one thing. A few people even DM'd me saying, how about this and this and this? So, yeah, taking all of that into consideration, here is what you guys wanted and a sort of combination of all 3. Here we go. Prince Erasmus does take the vial. He reaches out, fingertips gently brushing against the assassin's as he takes the vial from him. For a brief moment, there's that flash again of memory, not just of the night 5 years ago when they now remember that they had first seen each other, but also the previous night when they had slept, cuddled together in the upturned carriage, drinking, laughing, and smooching a little bit. So the prince has taken the vial of poison. He takes it from the assassin, and he sits on this bed in the dark of the dingy little shitty tavern, and he looks at it. He looks at the strange, colourful liquid, and he considers everything. He thinks of all the reasons why, and he unstoppers the vial. And this is a huge moment, not just for him, but for Darrow the assassin as well. Darrow has carried this for nearly 5 years, never breaking it, never opening it. He came close a few times over the years, I expect, in various moments of darkness and solitude, and right at the depths of when he had no money, sleeping on the streets, everything was just falling to shit around him. But he never drank it. He never did it. And while at first he thought he was punishing himself, thinking, I deserve to live knowing my failures and having this as a final piece of failure. I couldn't even do that. Somewhere in the back of his mind, in the back of his heart, in the back of his soul, he actually knows that the reason he never drank it was because he had something to live for. Something, even if he didn't know what it was, just a desire to keep on living. And that was why it confused him. And it wasn't even a happy feeling. It was just a feeling. Tiny, small, insignificant most of the time, but nonetheless it was there. Every time in nearly 5 years that he could have drunk that vial of poison, he didn't do it. And now he's having mixed emotions again, seeing the vial unstoppered. Not just because, oh Christ, the prince might be about to drink this might actually be happening, but also because that vial meant something, good and bad, and now it has been opened, unsealed, there's no turning back. That's a huge thing, a huge weight he's carried with him all these years, and he can't quite tell whether the weight has lifted or suddenly dropped like a rock into the pit of his stomach. He stares at the vial, staring and staring, and the stopper is off and it's in the prince's hand, and he looks up into Prince Erasmus's face, and then his eyes flick again to the vial, back and forth, waiting. And Darrow has a sudden, lurching desire to snatch it back. The prince is not looking at the assassin for the first time in a long time, and this also unsettles Darrow a little bit as well. He's gotten used to this man scarily quickly. Darrow has lived his entire life, particularly the last 5 years, keeping into the shadows, especially with the big burn mark down his face, his scars, the fact that he is a wanted criminal. He keeps out of the way. He doesn't want to be seen. He is the very epitome of do not perceive me. But this man, this bloody beautiful, who said he was beautiful? Beautiful man who he got to kiss last night. He has suddenly got very, very comfortable with this man in his space, perceiving him, touching him sometimes, holding his hand, sleeping curled up together, and now they're going to share a tavern bed, and it all just smushes up inside him, and the fact that Prince Erasmus is not looking at him, those dark brown eyes are not staring into his pale blue ones, that unsettles him. Going back to Prince Erasmus then, he holds the glass vial up. He's looking at its contents. He can't look away. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he wants to look across to Darrow. He has that pull, a calling, something telling him, look up. But he almost knows that if he does, he won't dare do what something else inside of him is begging him to do, begging him for that release, the sweet release of nothing, of the end, and something maybe, just not this life. And he takes the vial to his lips. But he has stopped. The second that glass vial hits his lips, Darrow leaps into action. He's seen enough. This was all the confirmation he needed, and we'll go back to that in a minute. He reaches forward, hand in the air between them, and he says, "You do realise if you start to drink that, I'm taking it from you and finishing the rest, right?" That makes Prince Erasmus stop. He lowers the vial, still holding it tight in his hand, but finally he looks up and their eyes meet. And he sees the assassin leaning towards him, hand outstretched, a look of desperation and something akin to realization on his face. And as the eyes meet, the prince says quietly, "You can't do that." To which Darrow, shuffling closer now, hand outstretched towards the vial, says, "But you can." A minute passes. A long, slow minute. The vial is still held in the prince's hand. Darrow's hand is still outstretched for it, but neither of them move, and neither of them speak. It's Darrow who breaks the silence. Almost exactly a minute later, he blinks and says, "So, we doing this or what?" And his eyes flick down to the vial and then back up to the prince's face. Erasmus lets out a long, slow breath. And finally, he shakes his head. No. No. They both look down at the vial then. It's unstoppered. They can't reseal it. And somehow, neither of them want to. Something passes between them unspoken, this insane, crazy bond that they have and haven't seemed to have to nurture at all. It's just there, innately. Both pairs of eyes look at this vial. And suddenly, as one, two hands take the vial and smash it onto the tavern room floor. The glass smashes everywhere, tiny tinkles of it shattering. And the liquid inside that gloops all over the floor slowly disintegrates into the wood with horrible, acidic, bubbling noises. It squelches, it breathes almost, and the wood creaks and burns and bubbles. And when it finally finishes, There is a black red stain oozing all over the floor, softly drying in the candlelight, and the wood has been part burned away. The two of them stare, horrified, and they realize what an awful way to die that would have been, burned alive from the inside out. And then Prince Erasmus, in the lightest voice he has had for a long time, says, "Well, that has rather put me off the idea, I must confess. I never really thought about how it would feel." Darrow looks at him, immediately taking his hand, without even conscious thought, without realizing he's doing it, wanting to offer comfort, but more than that, wanting to hold the prince present in this moment, keep him locked on this realization that perhaps he doesn't want to do this after all. He doesn't say anything, but Prince Erasmus continues, looking up into Darrow's eyes. He asks, "Why did you offer it to me, if you weren't going to let me take it? Why?" And Darrow explains his train of thought. He says that he believed the prince's words. Of course he did. He understood what the prince was saying, and while he didn't know why he wanted it, he believed that the prince wanted it. He has seen men do it. He's seen people talk about it. He has seen and recognized the signs, and he believed it. He believed the prince. He saw it in his face every time they looked at each other. But he needed to know how far along the prince was. He needed to see with his own eyes rather than be told. He needed to see how close to the edge of the cliff this man was standing, and if, given the chance, he would jump off. And then they both laughed. It was that morbid kind of a laugh that can only be shared between people who have seen the edge of the cliff. Between people who have walked that fine line, who have toyed with the edge of the knife, and know how it feels. And in that moment, the prince knew that he had something he was sticking around for. And it wasn't just the man in front of him. It was the notion that more moments could be like this one. Especially, to be honest, if Darrow was involved. After this, Darrow offers to take Erasmus on a nighttime stroll. It's dark, it's quiet, there's no one around to really recognise him, especially not now he has darkened his hair. They switch their clothes around again, wearing an odd combination of jackets and shirts, fancy, ornate, and not. Darrow does not take his face mask back, though. He leaves this with Erasmus, knowing that the security of it, even though his hair is so much different and it has made a huge difference to his person, he knows that the mask can make you feel more secure. And in fact, if Darrow were to think about this for a little bit longer, he might realise that Prince Erasmus's comfort had meant more to him than his own for a little while now. They take some of the food with them, things that can be easily carried and eaten while they're walking. They step out of the shitty, grotty little tavern into the tiny back alley streets, and they follow them, twirling round through corners, passing through puddles of leftover rain. They walk through the market, everywhere closed, every stall shuttered up for the night. It's late, very late, getting towards 2 in the morning, 2:30, 3, as they keep wandering on through and around this town. They look at the sights, they go past a fancy church, and because there's no one else around, they can take the time to admire the architecture. They walk around and around and around this town, their feet just carrying them as they talk a little, laugh a little, learn things about one another. Stupid things, favourite colours, favourite moments of history, things they want to do, ideas, plans, tidbits of stories they've heard from their youth. The prince learns that Darrow has an interesting history. This was voted for when I created him over on my Patreon. Darrow's ancestry is confusing, even to he himself. He knows he is part Fae, for his mother was a Fae being, but he never saw her much beyond his 6th or 7th birthday. His birth father was celestial, a being of almost infinite light and stardust. not quite a deity or a god, something akin to what we would call an angel. But he never met the man. He knew nothing about him. He felt that celestial connection sometimes. He says sometimes under a full moon, his skin takes on a slightly iridescent glow, but he's never been able to tap into any of the powers that either of his parents possessed. He was raised on the road by travelling bands of mercenaries and adventurers and families, and eventually his mother just wandered away. It was her want, it was her habit. She was a creature drawn to the wilds and everything and nothing, and while she loved her son, she loved adventure more. And he didn't bid her any ill will when she wandered away for the last time. He expects she's still out there somewhere, but he hasn't missed her for many years. He got used quickly to not having a family like that. Travelling on the road, it was fine. He picked up odd jobs here and there, but he slowly fell into more criminal activities. He got dropped in a major city and just never returned to the cart. He found his way into the criminal underbelly and was accepted at once. Perfect, they all said. Someone with no family, no ties, no connections, someone who can disappear, and there's no one to come looking. He knew he was expendable. He knew he was being used over and over. He knew no one really cared. And so he learned how to fight. Not the scrappy fistcuff fighting he'd been doing before in his youth. Proper fighting. Fight to the death fighting. Fight to save your life or kill another fighting. And soon he was being trained in the ways of being an assassin. And, well, the rest of the story, the prince knows. Darrow learned about the prince's backstory as well. He learned that the mother had died after she'd given birth to him. His older brothers, being 10, 15 years older than him, had not really paid him much mind. Their father was too busy training his oldest brother to become the next king, and he had been left. Looked after, waited on hand and foot, but still left. He had tutors, but he never really had friends. He had no connections, he simply existed, wandering from vast palace to vast palace depending on where the family stayed. And everything was cold, and everything was stone, and everything was ancient and tradition, and he just had to sit there. Far away from his father, far away from his older brothers. No connection to anyone or anything. And that's why he started going down to the kitchens, the warmest part of any palace. There was always a fire going, always something cooking, always people on hand ready to make whatever anyone in the palace desired any time of the day or night. And he learned about cooking, and he learned about baking. Baking in particular he loved, seeing ingredients go together and form something. But it was the heat of the ovens, the heat of the desserts they made, the treats, everything. Warm loaves of bread, warm pastries, hot donuts fresh from the oven. That was what intrigued him. The warmth and the heat. And that's why he loves baking. And that's why he started to have dreams of opening his own shop, of running away and owning a tiny little bakery somewhere and just vanishing into being not himself anymore. Darrow didn't push, but the prince slowly began to explain why he had taken the vial, why he had not been scared of the assassin, and why he'd been planning to walk into that lake with his pockets full of pretty, pretty stones. He said, simply, "If I had never been here, nothing would be any different. My mother would still have fallen ill, would still have died. My brothers would still have connected to each other and no one else. My father would still have been training him to be king. Everything that happened would have happened exactly the same way. Just one less place at the dinner table. One less name shouted in anger. One less disappointment. But the world would be no different. No worse without me, and no better with me. I bring nothing. Not even the smallest joy to anyone. Even my father brings small joys to people. The people love him. The people like my older brother. My brothers like each other. Their wives like them. Their children like them. They have done something. They've created something. I've created nothing. I've done nothing. I bring nothing. So why the hell should I still be here? And that's when I realized I shouldn't be. And a week ago I decided how. And earlier tonight, you changed my mind. Ironically, considering the conversation they're currently having, the two of them come to a stop in their walk. And they are just outside the cemetery. Neither of them quite grasp the irony of the situation, but there's a path leading into it that they haven't taken yet. They've been following the main streets, the back alleys, going round and round and round. But perhaps the irony does hit them somewhere in the back of their minds. Whatever it is, they turn, and this time they go to the left. And they take the path through the trees and the bushes and the brambles and the flowers into this old, run-down, but still operational cemetery. They walk through on the tiny, dusty path, walking past grave after grave, rows upon rows, higgledy-piggledy all over the place, still growing. This place has only a few fences. It has room to grow and grow as the town grows and dies and lives anew. And they carry on going until they reach its centre, far away from any lights save two sputtering candles in the street lights just around a bench. And they sit on the bench in the middle of this graveyard. And they hold each other's hands, looking out over the world. Darrow starts reading the gravestones. The names none of them recognise, and some of them are worn away by now. But one of them catches his eye. He squeezes the prince's hand and points to it, and together they both read the passage scrawled beneath the name and the dates. How many stars have to fall before you make the wish? That line is something from an Instagram request that I have been sitting on for, I think, 3-4 parts now. I couldn't find a way to work it in, and I really, really loved it. So thank you for that one. You know who you are, and I hope you enjoy the fact that it has now finally been incorporated into this work. Erasmus finishes reading and smiles. I never thought about it like that. He turns to Darrow now and looks him straight in the face. What would you wish for? If you could have any wish, what would it be? Darrow has to quite genuinely fight the urge to say, you. He nearly says it. His mouth starts to form the word, but it feels too soon. It feels too much. It feels like pressure in this already precious moment. So instead, he thinks for a moment. And then he says, I guess I'd wish for something safe. Something what's mine. Something what don't make me feel like I'm running. Something what feels, well, safe, calm. Something I can come back to time and time again, no matter where I go. Maybe something I can take with me. I don't need one place. I can be wherever, but I don't know. I've never had... And the prince interrupts at this moment, kindly, to offer a word. Stability? Yeah, Darrow says, thinking it over. Yeah, I guess you're right. Something stable, just a little bit. Kind of feels like everyone else got a bit of that, and I never had it. Kind of feels like my turn for some of the normal shit. You know? Actually, I do. The prince replies to this. I strangely feel that I've been longing for that too. And you would think that my life is the most stable of all. I mean, protected on every side, guards, tradition, and grandeur, but none of it felt real. None of it felt mine. I felt like I was on my tiptoes all the time, watching what I said or did and didn't do. And stability sounds nice. And you're right, you don't need to be in one place to have it. Stability can be much like the concept of home, I suppose. It's wherever you are happiest. It's who you're with. And they sit there on that thought, holding each other's hands and drinking in everything they've just said. They sit there until the sun begins to rise. And I'm going to use another quote request from Instagram, which was, "And then the morning came, and with it dawned new hope." I'm going to finish this part here. I'm going to give you guys 2 things to vote on today, though. So you're going to vote on what you want to happen next in the story, and there's another vote, which is also very important. So I'll tell you that one in a minute. First off, 3 options for what happens next, and let me know what you want in the comments down below. Option number 1. Prince Erasmus and Darrow the Assassin decide to go and find out who killed the king, to try to free Erasmus from the blame and to get his name cleared. So, option 1, who murdered the king? Option 2, they decide to fake Prince Erasmus's death, thus freeing him from any ties and obligation to his family and allowing him to go off and live his life. Also, he would no longer be a wanted criminal, as he would be deceased. Option number 3. Because you guys do this a lot, I'm going to give you the option. Alright, option number 3, both. They decide to find out who was trying to murder the king and fake Erasmus's death. Possibly after finding out who has killed the king, possibly before they do it, but they combine both of those ideas and they decide to do both. So, what do you want? Option 1, option 2, or option 3? Let me know in the comments down below. And now here is your other special vote that you're going to be making for me. It also has 3 options, and I need you guys to let me know before the next episode. How long do you guys want this OC story to carry on for? I'm going to go completely with you guys on this one. It is entirely up to you. As you know, I love creating stories. I improv them a lot. I do so many of these videos so much. I am happy to keep going as long as you guys want. I do want to turn it into a bit of a TikTok series as well, where I sort of act out some of the moments. I really need to get on that. I wanted us to get a little bit further along in the story before I started, but I will start doing that now. But how much more do you guys want? So option 1, it carries on indefinitely until maybe it reaches a natural end, or we, finish a plot arc and then we put it to bed for a little bit, bring it back. So option number 1, just indefinite, as long as it goes, keep going forever, all right? Option number 2 is it carries on to a certain point, say the end of a story arc or a certain plot moment, or there's been 25 episodes and we say, that's it, we'll call it a day, 10, 25, whatever the number is. Pick a number if it's specific or a plot point, whatever you want, we've wrapped it up, let me know, end it here, okay? Option number 3 is that we only carry on for a little bit longer. We've done episode 6, so we could end it on episode 7. That's quite a good number, 7 episodes. We could end it on number 10. That's also a good one. So if it's going to be quite a close number, anything less than 20, let me know as option number 3. So there are 2 things I need you guys to vote for. Let me know in the comments down below, or go onto Instagram, reply to the stories on there, go on my TikTok, however you want to do it. DM me if you don't want to comment, that's absolutely fine. Let me know these 2 things. Number 1, where does the story go next? Are they option 1, finding out who killed the king, option 2, going to fake Erasmus's death, or option number 3, both of the above? And then on the second vote, I need you to tell me, how long does this story continue for? Option number 1, forever, keep going forever. Option number 2, to a certain point, and if you've got an idea, let me know what that point is, or that number of episodes. And number 3, very soon. So episode 7, part 7, or maybe part 10, that kind of thing. Alright, I leave everything in your very capable hands. You've been amazing at picking things so far, and you like to challenge me, you absolute chaos gremlins. I love you all very much. Don't forget to hydrate. I will try to bring you some different Monday Madness episodes. I'm going to try and intersperse these. Much as I love telling this story, I quite miss doing the random chaotic extra videos, and I've got a little bit of time, I say, hopefully. I am working on a cosplay though, so we will see. I'll hopefully bring you some more stuff, and also the Peter Pan lore content is going to be up on that page soon as well. Enjoy the rest of your week, my wonderful jelly spoons. As ever, this was not a Monday Madness Monday. Just have a crazy Tuesday, why not? I love you all very much. Goodbye.